Hello and welcome back to Shed Talk. This is the second video for September, and as I said in the first video, in this one we're going to start getting the birds out and doing our full assessment of the studs, so cocks and hens. One is to just assess them and see which ones are going to make the breeding team and which ones won't, but also then look to pair up based on the best cocks, best hens that are both suitable for each other. Thanks for those of you who watched the last video and liked it. Please do subscribe if you enjoy the videos, click on the like button and don't forget to hit the bell if you want to get early notifications of the upcoming videos. It does help the channel, so please do subscribe. Well, as I say, I'm in the main flight with the cockbirds, trying to catch a few up. I'm just going to grab my net and I'll meet you back once I've got them. Well, I've got the first two birds up ready to assess. What I like to do is have a number of things around me when I'm assessing. So the first one of those is of course the Budgerigar Society standard, so the ideal Budgerigar, which you get in the welcome pack when you first join the Budgerigar Society. So this is what I've got. I like to have that handy so that I can compare the bird, have a quick glance at the ideal, and then compare it with the bird that's up in the cage. That gives me my first view, I suppose, of what the bird might look like or should look like. The other thing I do is I have a book called The Cult of the Budgerigar. It's a fairly old book, but in there it's got some standard faults. So I like to have the standard faults in front of me, or some of the faults, common faults should I say, in front of me. So if they match any of those, they're obviously going to get marked down in terms of that overall position. The sky blue looks a little bit puffed up at the moment, so I might have to have a look at him, see if he might need to stay indoors for a little while. He looks a little bit off colour. The other thing that I like to have is my database with all of the birds on there. That's mainly to check the age. What I do is I give them a weighted score depending on the age, and the older they get, of course, the less the weight is added to it, so it removes the total score overall. When I talk about score, what I do is I have a spreadsheet that I like to score all of the birds on, and then that way at the end I can rank them in order based on their overall score. I also do a straightforward comparison, as you would do if you're judging, and on that, when I'm getting them out of the flight, what I do is, like everybody else I suppose, every time I go down to the flight I have a quick look, see what catches my eye. But what I like to do is when I get them out of the flight is to get those birds that I think aren't going to make the grade out first. This was something when I was stewarding for Roger Carr once. He was explaining to me how he assesses the birds when he's judging, and he says the easiest thing to do is to get rid of those that aren't going to make the rundown first, the obvious ones out of the way, and then you're left with comparing the better birds, which is what I do here. I try and get rid of the birds that I don't think in the flight are going to make it. It's not to say they won't, but in the flight aren't going to make it, and that way I tend to get those out of the way first, and I'm left with the better birds at the end for me to look at. When I'm scoring, I score against the following areas. So the mask, as you might imagine, I then look at the overall head, so which includes back skull. I look at the overall size of the bird, that's both in terms of its length and its width. Any birds that are flecked will get marked down if they are flecked. I look at the blow, how well what they're doing above the top of the head, how well they're blowing, how well they're likely to blow if they're not blowing while they're in the cage. The overall style of the bird, and I suppose that's where I compare the ideal Budgerigar to the one that I see in front of me, and then I give them, depending on the spot size, so they're scored against that, and then from that they'll get their overall score. What I will do is I will post a link to my spreadsheet in the comments of this video, so anybody that wants to see it or wants to download it can do. It's on Google Docs, so anybody can do it, even if you don't have Outlook or any of those, I suppose Microsoft Sheets and any of those type programs. Google Docs is free, so you can download it from that. Well, I suppose it's time to crack on. What I'll do is I'll crack through them, and then at the end of this I will show you my sort of top 10, I suppose. Top 10, starting from number 10. So here's number 10. This is a this year's bird. So still got quite a bit of growing to do. It won't go in the breeding cage. I'll probably give him a little bit longer to mature. There was a couple of birds that were a little bit older than him that ran in very close. So, being this year's bird, he just came out on top. So that's number 10. This is number 9. So an opaline, again, this year's bird. I think just a little bit older than the other one. None of them particularly holding their wing carriage very well at the moment. So, yep, number 9, opaline sky blue. Got a bit more blow than the other one, I think, and also has a little bit more length, and he's already filled out a little bit more. So that's number 9. Okay, number 7. When I was judging this one didn't present particularly well. Not sure if he's a little bit off colour, although his eyes look quite active now. This bird was in the breeding cages last year, so he's a couple of years old, and I think reaching probably the end. His flights are a little bit on the long side for me, but so I probably don't know if he's going to go back into the breeding cage or not. I'll have to have a better look at him. And number 7, we've seen this bird plenty of times before, compared him the last time. He probably, in terms of the overall bird, he's quite nicely let down by markings, I think. So definitely will find himself back in the breeding cage this year. So that's number 7. Expected him to come out a bit higher actually. Still might if I was to put him up against again. Okay, this is my number 6. Light green cinnamon. Just like the style of this one. Puts me in mind of that grey. I'll have to see if they've got similar parentage. Yeah, I like the style. So that's my number 6. And here's number 5. Again, not showing particularly well. I'll just bring the camera down a fraction. Get a slightly better view of him. There we go, number 5. Actually, when I'm comparing these two now, I think the light green's probably number 5, and this one's probably number 6. I'll switch them around. So number 6 and the light green was number 5. So here's number 4, another grey. Not happy with being in the breeding cage at the moment, still looks a bit nervous. So that's number 4, coming on to the top 3. And here's number 3. Again, puts me in mind of the grey we've already looked at. Could do with being a little bit wider across the top of the face, I think. That's got a lovely depth of marks on him. This one didn't go in the breeding cages the last time round, so not sure why I didn't. He must have been a bit off colour when I was going to put him in. So that's number 3. Now we'll take a look at the top 2. Okay, top 2 birds is number 2. Again, it looks a little bit narrow across the top head, but I think some of that's just because of the width across his shoulders makes him look smaller between the eyes than he actually is. But a nice sized bird from my point of view, and lovely depth of mask, and just starting to get the style above the head. If anything, he's a little bit lacking behind the eye now I look at him, but I'll have to make sure I give him a hen that's got plenty behind the eye. And now finally we'll have a look at number 1. Okay, I won't spend too long on this bird, we've seen plenty of him in the last couple of videos, so yeah, really wish I managed to get him out onto the show bench. He'll undoubtedly go back in the breeding cage. We'll find him a nice hen, one that he didn't go with last year, and let's see how he goes. So there we go, that's all of the birds, all of the cock birds assessed. I've now got to assess the hens, and then we can look at pairing up. Well, we've sorted all the hens out, so we'll have a quick look at the rundown. There's only 10 that are suitable for breeding at the moment, so this is number 10. You may remember this bird from the first video. It was paired across to the yellow-face dominant pied. I did say at the time that the yellow-face dominant pied was far too good for this hen, and now when I compare her to the remainder of my hens, the hens I've got in the flight, she's actually come out the worst of all, so not surprising. Very narrow at the top, however does have a nice clean back line. Overall, I mean, yeah, what can I say, not the best of birds, but very long actually, so quite a long bird. So if I need to put any length into any of the birds, she might be one that we will look to. But although she's got length, she's got no width whatsoever across the top of the head. So that was number 10. This is number 9 in the rundown. Once again, very narrow in the head, although quite nice and wide on the shoulders and quite broad around the chest. She has a nice straight back line on her, so that's quite a useful feature when you come to have a look at some of the other hens that actually beat her. But yes, so number 9 once again. Overall, just a bit narrower on the head really, and not much depth in the mask. And this is number 8. Got a bit of a better head on this bird, but very, very short. So has no length about it whatsoever. Quite broad, stands well on the perch, but like I say, it's got no length to it. Also very poor wing carriage overall, so not the best style of bird. But still came out ahead of the other 2 greens, so the dark green and the light green. Interestingly enough, both the dark green and the light green were in my breeding team last year, so as you can see, I think I've got a few hens. I think I've improved on the hens from last year overall, because most of the ones in the top 6, I think only 2 of them made last year's breeding team, which is a good sign for me. Shows they're improving, particularly the hens. So yeah, so this is number 7 in the rundown, dominant pied grey. Got a lot of spots on him, which is an advantage for my dominant pieds. Remember me talking about one of the cockbirds not having any spots whatsoever, which gets him down. Probably got a little bit too much white on the wings, would be my guess. So yeah, number 7. And number 7, another dominant pied, another grey dominant pied in fact, better than the last one, slightly bigger. It's got a nice very nice broad face on her. Not too bad over the top, but not the best. Reasonable mask. Again, holds its wings quite poorly. I need to watch that fault in my bird by the looks of it. Also got a bit of a hooked tail when she's not standing particularly well, so lets her down a little bit. And also not the biggest of birds, not the longest of birds. So, but overall, quite a nice hen. So makes number 7 in my rundown. I think this one was used last year actually. So. Another one of those birds that was higher up the list last year. And here we have number 6 in the rundown. Again, it's the grey, a little bit better across the top of the head, a bit better face on this bird than the last one. Don't particularly like the hunched back look on him. He looks like he's got a bit of a hunch. I've got a few birds that sort of lean forward from the neck. Again, a fault I'm going to have to keep an eye on and make sure I don't double up on it. Reasonable mask on this bird, doesn't quite show up in the picture as well as it does in the breeding cage. And overall, a better style of bird in terms of the way he or the way she sits. So this bird was number 6 in the rundown, cinnamon grey. Didn't mention it on the last bird, but the last bird we saw, the one that made number 6 in the breeding cage, or number 6 in out of my hens, is the only bird I've had to mark down for flecking, which is quite a good thing. So far not too much, or hardly any flecking in my shed on the Budgerigars. Okay, so now we've got a grey, first of the grey cinnamons. See what I mean by the way it's holding its neck. This bird actually sat, it's got a sister who sat much better, and really doesn't like to hold its head up, this bird, but actually has a really nice face on her. Sorry, and I'm not sure if I can get them to perform a little bit better. There you go. I think you can probably see that there now. When it does sit and look, it has got a really nice deep mask and a nice broad mask and face on it. Other than the way it holds its head, if it was to sit up a bit more, I think it would have come much higher in the lineup. So cinnamon grey comes in at number 5 in the lineup. Again, not used. This is a relatively young bird, not used last year at all. And number 4, not the greatest head on this bird, but it is, in terms of its size, it's one of the biggest birds I've got in the, one of the biggest hens certainly I've got in the shed. When she does decide to not lean forward on the perch, she wasn't doing that earlier when I was assessing her. I'll just see if I can get her to sit up again. What I'd say is, when I'm saying it's got a nice, like previously I said, a really nice deep broad mask, that's in comparison with the other birds in my shed, not necessarily in comparison with, you know, a champion's bird in a champion's shed. So we can only work with what we got, can't we? So I have to compare it with what I've got in my shed. But yeah, she's standing a bit better now. Very nice long bird, nice style, bit narrow pinched in the head, top of the head, not a lot over the top, but makes up in other features. So I need to think about what I put her to in terms of cockbirds. Make sure it's fully complementary. But yes, so a dark green. This is the other of the young grey greens. As you can see, it sits much better than the one who's looks really, I think it's called hoopy carriage, so where the head drops forward. Looks a bit like a Scots fancy canary that I've wanted, didn't he? Or she. So this one, yeah, Howard's head much better, came out further on top, and actually made number 3 in the rundown. Still a fairly youngish bird, and at the moment still looks a little bit short to me overall, but I think it's better, definitely a better bird than than her sister, and probably got a little bit more potential. Again, as per the sister, does have a nice face. I'll see if I can get her to look at the camera. No, she definitely doesn't want to, but she does have a very nice face. Yeah, so that one there then is number 3 in the rundown. Sorry if it's got a bit confusing in terms of the numbers. Good job I got a spreadsheet to keep me on track. And on to the top 2. So this yellow-face grey, you can probably guess from the way it's holding its head, this is the mother of the 2 grey-greens that we saw earlier. So was in the breeding cage, only went for one round and then just lost interest and refused to sit. So she laid but then just refused to sit, so I took her out, gave her a rest. She can actually, when she does decide to sit, she isn't as bad as that in terms of her posture, as bad as the earlier grey-green I had up. So the worst of the 2 grey-green sisters. But a nice big bird, not showing it there, but is actually bigger than she looks in the cage, and nice mask on her. Nice width between the eyes for one of my birds. So overall not a bad hen. Comes out as number 2. I say was in the breeding cage last year, so we'll go back in. Only produced those 2 grey-green hens that we saw, so hopefully we'll produce a little bit more, or a few more, and if I put her to the right cock we can avoid that head fault that she has, that cocking of the head, the neck being too low. But other than that, she's got a nice style about her, in my eyes. And it's all in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? So we'll move on to the number 1 hen in my shed. And here we have the number 1 hen in my shed. Again, not presenting herself very well. Earlier she stood beautifully for me. I'll just see if I can get her to stand up again. Yellow face opaline. Really nice looking bird for me, really nice in terms of her size and that, and again one of this year's birds. So I'm hoping she will produce well for me. Looks like she's got a bit of a hunch there again, like the others, but actually when I was assessing her earlier she showed no sign of that, so she stood beautifully in the cage. So maybe just getting a little bit tired of being in the show cage and wants to get back into the main flight. There you go, looking down now, not very happy at all in there, is she? We'll just see if I can get her to show herself a bit better. Oh, there we go, hopefully that looks a bit better for you. Still looking a little bit tired, I think, of being in there, so I'll put her back in the main flight, but she's the number 1 hen in my shed. All of the hens back in the hen flight, a little bit more relaxed. I think the opaline's relaxed a little bit more now, so showing herself a little bit better, I think there. Actually a really nice bird for my shed, as I said earlier. So, well, I hope you enjoyed that video. That's all of the cocks and all the hens assessed. That's how I do it in my shed. I'm sure you do it completely different in yours. Please let me know in the comments how you go about doing it, or whether you found that the way I do it interesting. The video's gone on a little bit longer than I anticipated. It took me a bit longer to assess all of them and to show you how I do it. I hope you don't mind that. In the next video for October we'll be looking at pairing up the birds, maybe give you an opportunity to choose the hen for one of the pairs. But that's in October. Until then, please do stay safe and enjoy those birds. See you then.